Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
What's it been, like a year since we've done a Bradless episode?
I was trying to think about the last time we did one without Brad. Do you think we did one during the pandemic?
No, I don't think we've done a pandemic episode without Brad, no.
I don't even know if we had the new table and have done an episode without Brad.
No.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, the last one I can remember him missing was either when he had the flu, which was like, this was before COVID, or when he split his lip. He busted his lip open like an idiot.
Or his shoulder, right?
Yeah, a lot of injury related. Huh.
It's been a long time.
It's know.
It's weird. I don't even know what to do.
I mean, I feel bad. So, Brad's not in today, unexpectedly. It's not his injury this time, but it is a hockey injury. Mika apparently took an errant puck off the post and is going to need stitches, the poor little one, but, you know, battle scars.
I definitely feel bad for her because that sucks as a kid, but there's just something inherently hilarious about kids getting hurt.
It's just
maybe it's because I'm not a parent, and that's why. But I just have this comedic vision of what happened, and it kind of made me laugh. But I feel so bad for her.
Knowing the kid's tough as nails does make it a lot easier.
Definitely.
Knowing that Brad probably shot that puck and was just like, oh my god.
I can just see it. He was just trying way too hard, like being a bro. And then just ripped one off the post, and it just took a funny hop and just beamed poor little Mika.
Hit his young daughter. Oh man, I will say they are like the quintessential hockey family, purely in that they are constantly playing in their free time, which I'm appalled that they ever have any, based on our account of Brad's life, and they are constantly getting injured through hockey.
Yeah. Well, wait till Hank starts playing too, like.
Man,
it'll just be hockey all the time, and it'll just be one hockey injury to the next.
That kid is built like a tank. He's going to just steamroll people.
Yeah, absolutely.
When he turns 13, he's going to deck Brad in a scrimmage, and it's going to be hysterical.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be bigger than Brad for sure. Unless something's out of left field happens, he's going to be a monster.
Well, Brad's not in. You're going to be stuck with Evan and I for today, so we'll do our best to either fill the void or help you appreciate the peaceful silence, depending on where you fall on Brad. Without further ado, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. A man down. I'm Ryan Hanna.
And I'm Evan.
I like that you gave a little pause there, just for the spirit of Brad to come through.
Yeah, you just got to pay tribute.
It's funny because one of the main topics for this episode is actually Jeff Blashill. And better judgment would say wait for Brad to come back before diving into it, but I think it would be hysterical to talk about it without him. Because, you know, he's going to bring it up again anyway, so we may as well.
It's not the first Jeff Blashill conversation and certainly not the last, so
no.
You know, we're just building it up a little bit for Brad, so when we come to this conversation again, he'll have even more talking points to discuss.
He's not going to let certain things go from the last game, and I'm 100% confident in that. So, you know, he's just going to say something like, okay, before we move forward, I just want to talk about this from last game. I don't know if you guys talked about it last episode, but I need to say my piece. Like, he's going to say that phrase word for word.
Yes, I would be betting on that big time.
Yeah. FanDuel Sportsbook put out betting odds on what Brad is going to say next episode. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to be talking about the Red Wings' most recent game against the Blackhawks. A little bit about that before jumping into some conversation about Jeff Blashill stemming from the post-trade deadline presser that Yzerman had. And then some news for the kids. Kids are all right. Veleno news, Seider news, Raymond news, before talking about some of the goings-on around the NHL. And then overtime. We'll see where that takes us. Okay, the Red Wings streak of glory is over. It was a 3-game win streak. Was it it was a 3-game win streak. Carolina, and then Chicago 4-1. And then last night, on Saturday night, they fell to Chicago 4-0 in what ended up being a, I don't know, uglier loss than usual. you can't expect the Red Wings to win 4 in a row. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if they don't, you can't be like shocked and mad that it happened. There's only so much that, superstar Adam Ernie can do to elevate this team. But man, the complete and utter failure of the power play last night was just like gutting to watch.
Yes, especially when at some point one of the power play units is Cholowski, Verana,
Gagne, Filppula, Nemesnikov.
Yeah. See, I couldn't even remember who it was. My brain has tried to get it out of me.
And that was the first power play unit. Like, that was coming out to start a power play down goals in a game. I think that at that point, that might have been when Larkin and Zadina were benched because they had, I don't know, a little streak where it seems like any shot that when they were on the ice, they didn't allow a ton of shots, but the shots that happened when they were on the ice went in. I don't know if it was a specific giveaway or a missed assignment or whatever that pissed off Blashill, but Zadina and Larkin sat for a lot, and that's the power play unit they got. I think the point where we can probably count on Brad having several small strokes was when they had a 5-on-3 and dumped it into the zone.
Yeah, that's probably not the best strategy that I could think of on a 5-on-3.
It's like,
I'm not sure I can think of worse though.
They started the power play, of course, with possession in the zone with the offensive face-off, and I don't know, everyone just bottled it. Like, they all just, it seemed like they were triple guessing every decision they made, skated into traffic. Like, you have all this space on a 5-on-3. They just didn't play it well. And I can't remember the last time they had a 5-on-3 of that length, so it's probably a little bit of like a rust thing. And when you don't have a super skilled team, you're not going to just, pick it up and go with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Riley. Like, it's just not what the personnel the Red Wings are working with. But okay, whatever. You lose the zone on a 5-on-3, that's fine. You had 45 seconds left coming into the zone. Carry it in, walk it in. You could probably crab walk in there. Like, it's gym class in grade school. But no, they dumped it in. Yeah, it was something to watch.
Yeah, well, you kind of hinted on it, right? Like, this team just is not uber skilled. They aren't gifted with one of the best goal scorers in the league. They don't have a Mitch Marner. Like, the creativity aspect is airborne. Is grade 3 art.
Yeah.
Best. So, there's no excuse for really dumping it in on a 5-on-3 because you definitely should be maintaining possession. But yeah, it's just another chapter in the Red Wings rebuild, kind of just, or maybe it's not even a chapter. It's probably just a page at this point. It's tough, when the losses come. Some hurt more than others, and last night being against Chicago, getting shut out by Malcolm Subban, that's a tougher one to swallow.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and shout and say this has like this can inform some pretty definitive opinions about the Red Wings this year, or here's one thing we should be especially angry at. Like, no, the Red Wings played bad, power play was bad, personnel decisions were at points questionable depending on your opinion. That's the story of every loss this year. I'm not even going to say Larkin and Zadina should never be sat in their lives. Like, that's just not the case. It is a lot more noticeable when you take away Larkin and Zadina, because that's Detroit's 2 best players.
Yeah, outside of Zadina, Larkin, Verana, the talent drops off significantly, and the Red Wings don't really have that luxury. Mind you, you could say, this season's really has no purpose at this point, at least by standings. So what's the harm in sitting them for X amount more minutes or less minutes per game, just for one game to try and instill something, right?
Yeah.
But still, when you're down, you gotta ride your horses. Every other top team in the league does it, unless you're Toronto in the playoffs. You got to do it, right? Like, last night, Cholowski leads the team with 15 minutes in ice time. If we remove Nielsen from the time on ice, the lowest on the team was Rasmussen with 10 minutes. So you got a 5-minute spread between your entire team. And the highest forward is at 13 minutes. Like, that it's Larkin. Like, that's just not going to get it done. Larkin's got to be playing way more than that. even if he's having a bad game, you got to let him work it out a little bit. Like, we can't have Dennis Cholowski, Stetcher, Stahl, and Hronik into Kaiser as your top minute eaters and expect to win. Like, it's just not a recipe for success.
And like, I'm not saying top players, like, I know I just said this, I'm not saying they should never be sat. Thinking back to Mantha earlier in the year, Mantha deserved that benching. Like, I disagree with a lot of Blashill's personnel decisions, and I disagree with a lot of, opinions regarding Mantha. But I think he deserved that benching. That was an effort thing. But I sometimes worry, and I'm talking about Dennis Cholowski here. That's what I'm going to hint at in a second. I sometimes worry that there's too much of a culture of, if you're good, you have no room for error. The whole, we expect better from you and we need you to be better. Like, that's fine as an overall premise. But I just feel sometimes that it's too biting on players who can't tough up to that. The players who don't have the natural callus, the players who just need a different type of development path. Brad commented on this during the game. Like, Cholowski looks like he's playing scared. Like, looked like he was playing scared to make a mistake. And I mean, that tracks with how up and down and unforgiving they've been with his time. I'm not saying he's deserved to be in the NHL, and he hasn't been. I don't think he has necessarily deserved it, but maybe that's not the kind of, tough love he needs.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a bit of scar tissue at this point with him, because that's sort of been the status quo with him, right? Like, he plays decently well enough to be in the roster, and then he makes has one bad shift, one bad game, and then he's back in the doghouse. Like, I certainly feel bad for him. And it's tough, for him to look around and be like, I'm most likely better than these guys. Like, he could have a potential longer term on this team. So, yeah, I don't know. The Dennis Cholowski development saga is one of mystery.
Yeah. It's hard, right? Like, we always talk about, developing these young guys, and the team is bad, but let's at least get some development out of these young guys. And I think sometimes there should be more attention paid to the fact that that's not something that you can necessarily separate out. If you're playing on a bad team, it's harder to develop. All of your flaws are way more exposed. And Cholowski is a defenseman with a major flaw, which is that he's not necessarily defensively responsible. It's a pretty big gap in his game. And, if you have absolutely no support in that way, you're going to be absolutely destroyed at the NHL level. And so I don't think he's had any amount of forgiveness or leeway just in terms of the teams he's playing against and the teammates he has. And so when the coaching staff is a little tougher on him, I think that's a recipe for the Cholowski we see today. And I don't know what the solution is here, right? Like, what do you say? Blashill, go develop him differently, but maybe this is just not the right environment for Cholowski to thrive. I don't know. I really don't know.
Some guys just don't work coming into a bottom feeder. Like, that's just how it is. It takes an ultra special player to turn the tides on a bad team. Like, it takes, a superstar talent to just come in and start building up a team. Like, it is incredibly difficult. So, yeah, like you said, when you're a mediocre depth, replaceable piece, whatever you want to call it, like, you are going to look that much worse because everyone around you is sort of the same caliber of player.
We're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Blashill and his future with the team. But first, I missed this, but I do want to call attention to it. We're partnered with the Jamie Daniels Foundation, which is a children's foundation initiative that was established in the memory of Jamie Daniels and founded by Jamie's father, who you'll know as Red Wings lead announcer Ken Daniels, and Jamie's mother, Lisa Daniels Goldman. The foundation strives to end the stigma of substance use disorder and provide support to those struggling with the disease or who are in recovery. Go visit jamiedanielsfoundation.org to find out more. In Yzerman's post-trade deadline press conference, he got a question regarding the future of Jeff Blashill because his contract's expired at the end of the season. So we have, a dozen or so games left before the Jeff Blashill question is a actual real tangible one and not one just in the future. And I don't really know what to make of Yzerman's response. My pessimist, nothing means anything with Yzerman part of me, which I think is the dominant theory here, is that when Yzerman said, I haven't had any conversations with Blashill about that, at the end of the season, him and I will sit down and chat about it. I felt that was pretty innocuous. I felt that was Yzerman wasn't telling us anything one way or another, and I wouldn't be too hopeful that just because it sounded short and blunt that it's anything more than that's just the way Yzerman speaks to media.
Yeah, it's pretty much right down the middle of the line, so it's maybe a good comment for a podcast because you can take it any sort of direction you want. It wasn't definitive one way or the other, so we can speculate all we want.
Yeah, just bullshit about it.
But it's kind of status quo for how Steve Yzerman is, right? Like, he's very tight-lipped and cards are always to the chest. So I don't really think anything of it. I feel like anything I'd say on it would be just personal bias or subjectivity on it.
I don't know. My overall theory of how Yzerman feels about the team right now is that he actually does not give a shit about the record this season. He just wants it to not be an absolute travesty. And if you can just get through the season looking like a respectable, and I'm not saying this ironically, like a respectable 28th to 31st overall team, that's it. Because he still wants a high draft pick because he knows, by God, we need it. And he just wants to make sure that fans aren't so tuned out that they don't ever buy jerseys or tickets again when fans can buy, tickets more en masse. So you take that, and then what do you apply it to, and apply that to the coaching situation? Then I really don't think it's crazy to imagine that Yzerman's going to bring back Blashill the same way he brings back, RFAs and young guys right now on a short-term deal.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's another resource. Mind you, their role and responsibility is vastly different. But this could be the solution for now. If he likes what Blashill's doing with the youth, that's very much up for debate. Then I could see Blashill sticking around for another year or two. Somewhere, I think I just heard Brad scream.
He's sprinting to his laptop right now.
Yeah. Would that be my, plan of attack? I don't think so. Especially because the Gerard Gallant storyline is too good to pass up on, and too good of a coach to pass up on. But at the end of the day, it's the Red Wings aren't in last place. They'd have to try a lot harder to beat Buffalo this year. The Wings are sitting in 26th position. Like, from last year to now, that might be viewed as a massive step forward. This year is certainly not a standard season, but if you look at where the positioning of the team in the league standings, like, that's a huge jump. Mind you, Buffalo's been Buffaloing. Vancouver's down there and has played like 36 games, so they're way behind. But, if you just look at it in a vacuum, that might be mission accomplished for this season.
Well, yeah, and that's a really good point. So the Red Wings are at 16 wins in 46 games so far this year. Last year, in 71 games, they had 17 wins. To illustrate just how much of an improvement they're at. Their overall points percentage last year, so of an available, full amount, 2 points per game, they scored .275. That was their points percentage total. The next worst team was .437 last year, which was Ottawa. Currently this year, the Red Wings are sitting not last in the league, like you said, 26, and they're at a .413 points percentage. That's a significant improvement. Before the start of the year, I drew some arbitrary lines. I said, I want Detroit to be at a roughly 72 to 74 point pace, around there. What is an average worst team or bottom feeding team? And that's currently what they're tracking to do. Before last game, they were on a 69 point pace over the course of a full season.
Nice.
Yeah, there it is. That obviously is down since the loss, but still they've been hovering around there. And honestly, as the team has gotten healthier and shook off the rust at the start of the season, I think there have been stretches, once you got past that abysmal power play slump, where they put together some good stretches of play and they were a good team defensively and they were hard to play against and they beat some top teams. And you know what? It doesn't matter what you think about Blashill, whether you love him or hate him, he does deserve credit for that. if we're going to bash on him for the losses like we just did about last night, we think a lot of that is attributed to some decisions he made. He deserves a lot of praise for, putting it together. I do think this year has had a better roster.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like it was definitely the year of addition by subtraction.
100%.
My only real concern going forward is, all these players are UFAs. Like at some point you've got to get your prospects into the lineup, and then we'll really start to see what direction this team is going in. Because if they just keep putting in the replacements year after year, you're going to just be spinning tires. So at some point they got to start passing the baton to see what this team what the potential of this roster really is. And if they're going in the right direction, because right now, I don't really know.
Was last year just an anomaly and this year they just suck normally, or was it an improvement, right? Like adding Bobby Ryan and adding Stetcher and before they got traded, Merrill and Nemeth, like those are all things that help the team, sure. But was this just a regression to the mean in general? Was last year just this like crazy out of this world bad season?
Yeah, well, we'll find out now after the trade deadline to see how big of an impact those additions were. And hopefully, segueing into one of our next topics is Joe Veleno being called to the taxi squad, getting him a look into the lineup, see what he could potentially has. Like, we're going to get glimpses of where this team could go in the future. But right now, it's just, I don't really know, unless we're going to end up re-signing we'll probably have to re-sign half the team. But I don't really know what to make of this team right now.
It's not popular, but I can see Blashill coming back on a 1-year deal. I can see Yzerman saying, I don't have a guy right now that I'm like head over heels about or that wants to come here. I need to suck for a little while longer because I don't think Yzerman thinks his team is going to be ready after one more bad draft. My hot take that I think it's going to piss people off is that this Mantha trade isn't the last trade of its kind, where Detroit trades a player who's contributing to them now in a positive way, like say Fabry or Bertuzzi or Verana. I think another one of those is coming probably within the next year or two. And if that timeline is as long as Yzerman says it is, which is like, that's the only thing he's been candid and honest about since he's come to Detroit, having a coach in Jeff Blashill where you know what the results are going to be and you don't want to just shake things up for the sake of shaking them up, I see it as a possibility. My preference, and I think it's definitely a greater chance than it was last season, would be to move on from Blashill. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him brought back for just a 1 year. Hey, not much has changed. We're going to continue to see this thing go. And like you mentioned, Evan, we're going to evaluate based on some better tools that we're going to try to give you.
And one thing people don't really think about is not every coach wants to coach a bottom feeder, a rebuilding team. There could have been conversations that with Gerard Gallant, he said, no, thank you. We don't know. 100%. And that's pure speculation. But like, look at Daryl Sutter. This is ironic at this point, but he said he doesn't want to coach a non-playoff team. Like, he wants to coach for a team that he believes can win the Stanley Cup. Joke's on him. He should have read the roster a little bit better, but there's lots of backroom conversations like that. Like, Gerard Gallant could be completely off the table at this point, and we're just rolling with what we got and with the best option available.
100%. There's a propensity for people to build out these like dream scenarios or these like black and white, like 1, 2, 3. These are the steps of how we get this coach. And it's just, that's not the way it works. These are human beings. The coach could want to come, but their partner or spouse could say, no, I'm not moving to Detroit.
Exactly.
I love it in Long Island. Like Lane Lambert could say, yeah, my family doesn't want to move here and I don't want to live away from my family right now. So
yeah, there's coaches where they can pick their time and place, and that's maybe not the best coach to bring in, like a Hitchcock type coach. Mm-hmm. So Jeff Blashill might be the best choice available right now.
In Yzerman's eyes, yeah.
Yeah, like we just don't know. I wish we had a GM who was like, or a GM that was like super involved on Twitter and actually gave some information so that we could feel something rather than just us speculating around the campfire?
Let's just say, let's start a new rumor that it's going to be Igor Larionov. I want it to be Igor. I would love to see Igor in the NHL.
Yeah, me too. Like, he has one of the best minds in hockey. And I think he works really well with the youth, at the World Juniors, for example. I think it could be a strong fit. But there's so many different things that go into that decision.
Yeah.
And he might just not be interested. He looks like, think of how skilled and how smart he thinks the game. Can you imagine him behind the bench right now when
Darren Helm
anybody outside the top line or out on the ice? It's like Wayne Gretzky being behind the bench. He's probably like, people actually think like this or don't think like this. Like, it could just be a nightmare scenario. That's another thing you want to avoid. You don't want the coach that's too good.
No. I don't know about Wayne. I think of Wayne as I think of like my organic chemistry and embryology profs, just like absolutely brilliant in their fields, but holy shit, I could not learn from them. They were way too smart. And I wonder if that was the case with Wayne.
Yeah, where they just get it and they're like, I don't understand how you don't understand.
I literally had a professor tell me that once. He's like, I don't understand how you don't get this. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I heard you paid a lot of money to not have this be the case. So if we could work this out together.
Yeah, that's essentially a mathematics degree in a nutshell. There's like just higher levels every single time. And you just try to keep up. And when you don't understand it, they try their best to explain it to you. And they break it down more slowly into more granular. And I still never got it. So yeah, I feel that. Yeah,
I was laughing with my brother about, having a science degree and then I'm not working in, biomed or anything like that. He's like, yeah, you mom and dad thought you were going to be a doctor. You got your degree and now you're a podcaster.
Yeah.
Sorry, mom and dad. You segued into the next point, which I should probably let us flip over to here. Joe Veleno. We mentioned before that he was recalled to North America. His quarantine period is just about over today at the time of recording. I believe that's when it lands on. He has been recalled to the Red Wings taxi squad, and it seems like his audition in the NHL is imminent. Nothing is certain for sure. He's recovering from kind of like whiplash concussion situation that he sustained a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago in Sweden. So he has to get through the protocol and feel better before he can play. But right now he's traveling with the team in their next couple of games, Monday and Tuesday night against Dallas. I believe that's at Dallas for both games. And the plan is for him to practice with them. And I think it's pretty soon where we're going to see this short, ELC audition where we get a little bit of Veleno as at the end of the season, just as a treat.
He gets 10 games, right? Or 9 games?
I think it was actually reduced because of the pandemic year. But yeah, he gets that limited number of games. I want to say 7. I don't have it in front of me. If I was smarter, I would have pulled up the notes. But yeah, he can get a certain amount of games before it burns a year of his ELC. I imagine they want his ELC to slide because everything's on a super long timeline right now. But sure. Yeah, that's an exciting thing for Red Wings fans. That's like a win in and of itself.
Yes, can't wait for him to slot in with Sam Gagner and Darren Helm on the fourth line.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before where it's like the Stonecutters Simpsons episode where Homer's got the rock behind him and then he turns out to be like the prophet or something for the Stonecutters and then he gets the bigger rock.
Yeah.
You're the chosen one, Joseph Veleno. Here's the bigger rock. You get Sam Gagner and Darren Helm on your line. Best of luck.
So horrifyingly apt. I love a good Simpsons reference. They have one for everything. Yeah, the 10 game requirement was prorated to 7 games for this season.
So basically almost the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean there's ample opportunity to get him in there. Let's say Veleno comes in. I think what they should do is at some point in there, maybe not the first game, maybe not right away, but at some point you try him out at center, right? Like that's what you want to kind of start to get a look at.
Well, what's the harm in putting him there at this point, right? Like we're not battling for a playoff spot, No. The teams below Detroit don't seem to be making up any ground, so it looks like we're kind of stuck in 26th, 27th. Throw him in there.
Yeah. If you're, if you have a strong enough will to bench Larkin and Zadina when that's, almost your entire offense except for the current Adam Ernie hot streak and Verana, you can play Joe Veleno at center. Will he do well at center right now? I don't know. Probably not. It's hard to come into the NHL and be an effective center right away, especially when you're a guy like Joe Veleno who seems like every step of the way needs time to adjust to the league he's playing in. But it would be good to see him get a look there. And you know what? This is just such like, it's the most smooth-brained, simple-minded thing you can think of. But I would love to see him get some center time with some good talent around him. I would love to see him get some center time with Zadina with him, with Verana with him. If Fabry
that's not happening.
No. If Fabry comes back anytime soon, stick Fabry on his wing. Put Rasmussen on his wing. I think that would be fun to do just to see what they can do together.
If you think Joseph Veleno is part of the future of the Detroit Red Wings, you got to put him around some, I'll air quotes, better talent, because putting him with guys who aren't going to be there in 2 to 5 years, what the hell is the point in that?
Yeah. I do see the merit in giving him sheltered minutes. So of course he's going to be playing with like Filppula and Gagne. That's just the nature of it. That's probably more of a, we only want you playing 8 minutes or 10 minutes tonight, and thus these are your line mates kind of thing, rather than, you're being punished for existing and here's Filppula and Gagne. And I actually hate lumping Gagne in there because I think for his role, he's having a quietly effective season, but still.
It could be, there's 6 other options we could insert in his name.
100%. I actually was going to say Nielsen, but I feel bad because he took that hit from Stillman last night, and I was just like, I don't know. Poor guy didn't deserve that, so I kind of feel bad ripping on him right now. But yeah, regardless, like, this is a fun little side story. This is akin to the Svechnikov playing against his brother thing that Red Wings fans are rooting for. Is it going to shake the world? Are they going to find the next Connor McDavid in this prospect? Is it going to absolutely blow everyone's minds and the trajectory for the rebuild? No, of course not. But it's fun to see the young guys get a chance. And it's a cool thing to root for. It
was like 2 years ago where they let Chris Chelios' son play, I don't know how many games it was for the Red Wings, and Taro Hirose was up, and the Red Wings are horrible.
Yeah.
But it was good to, lift the veil a little bit and get a peek at what potential some of these guys might have.
Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, Evan, I think that's a good point to touch on, which is that if you believe Veleno is part of this team's future, and the Red Wings have to hope he is, right? Yes. I think for his draft stock, I think Veleno's done well. He hasn't been a barn burner in terms of counting stats. Would he have like 21 points or something this year? Yeah, 20 points in 46 games in the SHL with a pretty bad Malmo team, all things considered. Took a while to get going, but then when he did, right? They need Veleno not to be the next Dylan Larkin, which I don't think anyone reasonable would be counting on him to do that, but they would really, really do well to have Veleno play second or third line center, be the kind of guy who can play up and down the ice. We've seen him display some pretty good creativity offensively. Like, he has, the skill is there. He can move. We know he can play at both ends of the ice. When he was in the AHL, at least, I know they were working on parts of his games that were had a lot to do with, if you want to become a mature NHLer with center responsibility, here are the things we need you to start doing. And that's not the kind of conversation you're having with a young guy in the AHL unless you believe you can do it. So the trick is with Veleno, he's 21. He was drafted after this draft, it'll be 3 drafts ago. You still have to be patient with him. These are just first steps, but yeah, hopefully these are the first steps into Detroit finding second, third line center, that can play behind Larkin.
And with Franzen out, going in against Dallas might be a good time for him.
Franzen.
What did I say? Nielsen. I was thinking Franz and then just added his EN to the end.
I was like, yeah.
Well, Franzen's out too.
Yeah.
With Nielsen out, now might be the best time to get him in. I think that, are they at Dallas or is Dallas in Detroit? Yeah, they're at Dallas.
Both games.
Might be a good time to get him in. You might, if you're not learning anything from your teammates, the other centermen on Dallas have had pretty good careers. So there could be some opportunities to learn from them as well. So he's, we can't, not every game can be against Buffalo, Chicago. You got to play against some half decent players. So I'm all good to throw him in against anybody at this point.
If he's feeling healthy, actually the next 4 games against Dallas, Thursday and Saturday, are both in Detroit, actually. So it's 4 games, 2 in Dallas and 2 in Detroit. But yeah, honestly, as long as he's feeling healthy, toss him in there. And even if it's only 4 or 5 games, right? Or whatever it is, where they put him in, he gets his look, fans are happy, Veleno's happy, he gets some NHL ice, and then they say, he's really struggling out there. He's a little gassed. He's a little bit outpaced. He's a little bit outmuscled right now. It's totally fine. And that's to be expected. You can't be too upset about that, but as long as you kind of get the look in, Yep.
Just trying to dip his toes in a little bit to let him see what the NHL pro game is like.
Yeah.
See if he gets the stone of triumph rather than the stone of shame.
One of you meme accounts, there's some content for you right there. Lucas Raymond, starting next season, signed his ELC, 3-year entry-level contract. So look at that. Another nice little thing for Red Wings fans.
Doesn't that mean he can now be traded?
I thought he could be traded before. You could trade the rights to players.
That's a Brad question.
Yeah. But still, did you get that from the freaking troll WWP trade rumors account?
I have no idea. I just ingest a bunch of Twitter conversation. And some stick, some don't, and I don't know where it comes from.
I can't keep track of the spin-off accounts you guys have. I really, truly mean that. And for those listeners who have seen it and think it's us, trust me, one account is hard enough to run. Brad has a habit of randomly capitalizing words, so he's not entrusted for public communications generally. And I say that confidently, knowing he's not going to listen to this episode.
We're 37 minutes in. There's not a chance.
Absolutely not. No, but you guys are insane, and I can never keep track. Evan Lobspeaker actually hasn't been around in a while. This might be a good episode for them to come back.
Yeah, this might be an outlier in terms of the statistical data, but yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
It's truly an honor to know that we have several meme accounts and tangential accounts run by none of us.
Yeah.
So comes with the territory, I guess.
I'm excited for the onslaught of comments we're going to get across all platforms telling us how amazing it was to hear more from Evan, and we should let Evan speak more. And Evan is, better than me and Brad combined, and we wish it was only Evan. And Evan.
It's not me saying those things either, because running just my Twitter account is more than enough for me. So
you don't even do it.
I know.
If you didn't recite things that happened on Twitter, I would have a hard time believing you were ever actually on it. But you truly do just lurk there like a freak in the corner, just watching everything and never participating.
It truly is the best spot for me to get my echo chamber information.
Yeah. Yeah. What else is Twitter for if not to galvanize the worst of your opinions?
Yes. It's just a massive machine of confirmation bias.
Lucas Raymond signed his ELC. It starts next season, so we know obviously he won't be in Detroit this year. He's still recovering, I believe, from his elbow injury. I guess there's a chance he could sign an amateur tryout with Grand Rapids and come over, although I'm not sure, with games being postponed and the COVID situation and his recovery, that they're going to want to do that. We've mentioned this on previous episodes. I guess it remains to be seen, but at the very least, we know he'll be over next season. And some other bit of news about the Red Wings overseas. To absolutely no one's surprise, Moritz Seider is one of the nominees for Defenseman of the Year in the SHL.
Yes, I can't say I saw many of their games, but every single highlight I saw was him just manhandling or people thinking they could manhandle him. And he just tossed them aside like they were small children. So, it looks like he may have outgrown that league.
Moritz Seider, there was some conversation earlier in the year when he really started to do this to the SHL, where people are like, well, this isn't going to translate to the NHL. And I think to a degree, to a certain extent, that's true. He's not going to come in and just absolutely dummy like a Radko Gudas or someone like some brick shithouse, whatever massive player like a Victor Hedman. I don't know. But I think there is a lot to be said about Seider's physical game and what he's been able to do against players who are heavy hitters by SHL standards, which isn't like an exactly physically strong league. But he's been able to, like you said, Evan, just toss these guys aside like they're children. Not every player is built like a brick shithouse in the NHL. The NHL is getting smaller and lighter and faster every single year. So in terms of physicality, as long as Moritz Seider has a position, which it looks like he's really far beyond his years in that part of his defensive game, he's going to be a physical force. I really believe he's going to be a physical force, and it's not going to be that hard to transition.
I think he's going to surprise a lot of current NHL players when they end up playing against him, because they're going to see a tall, lanky, pimply kid, and he's going to be a wall.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to develop, I'll say, a reputation around the league, just that he's not going to be intimidated by veteran presence, all the other BS that goes on in an NHL game. Like, I think he's just going to play sort of his game, and I think he'll just continue how he's playing right now into the NHL.
He's definitely going to have a target, eh? Like, they're going to see that he's able to do that, and there's going to be a lot of players that are going to say, "Oh, okay, kid, you're huge and you want to throw some hits. All right, let's throw some hits." And they're going to rough him up and they're going to go after him, and that just comes with the territory, right?
Like, absolutely. You know, you play a gritty, well, I shouldn't say gritty, but you play a more aggressive game, that comes with the territory, right? Like, don't be shocked if you see Moritz Seider in a fight sooner rather than later. Yeah. But if there's anybody who I think can handle themselves in one, it would be him.
You put it so well. Like, just imagine getting hit by this tall, lanky, pimply kid, like long flow, like goofy smile. Looks like he's just happy to be there. And all of a sudden he just rams you through the glass. It's going to be a shock to these guys.
The day one of the bigger, stronger players on a team, the only first one that comes to mind for me is a Tom Wilson type player, goes to hit him and doesn't get the expected result that him or his teammates are used to. I think that's where you're going to see a big oh shit moment.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. You know, I think he's outgrown his current league and he's ready to make the jump. I would love to see him sooner rather than later, at least for some time in Detroit.
I don't know what they're going to do. The SHL is a fantastic league. Like, a lot of people within the league will say that it's better than the KHL even. But I really just hope, and I think there's a good, strong chance that he just makes the Red Wings. I really think there is that opportunity.
Well, I would agree. Detroit's defense is no hell. That is for certain. So if he can, he's got a chance, 100%. Whether they always like to control the prospects in their ELCs. But I think if he's good enough, like, why not? Give us something. For the love of God, give us something.
Yeah. If he, and like, fans are going to love him. They already love him because of how much he's, outperformed everyone's expectations. He's made a lot of people, including us, look pretty dumb. He's a physical game. He plays a physical game, which people love. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to sell tickets when people are able to buy tickets again. Like, that says a lot about, whether or not he's going to stay up. Because
he kind of plays that style of game that Detroit fans, viewers, whatever, really rally around. So I could see him becoming a fan favorite quite quickly.
Yeah. European defensemen. First of all, the Red Wings have a big, like, European defenseman hole in their hearts right now ever since Lidstrom left.
Oh, yeah. Not
the same game, but yeah, he plays get you out of your seat hockey. Like, he plays, we want to see this guy in the LCA hockey. So that's a really good point. That might factor into the decision there. Because in a vacuum, I was going to say in a bubble, which has a completely different meaning now. In a vacuum, yeah, even if he's good enough, they might keep him in the A just because they're not
selling tickets to games or have like 10% capacity. Like, what the hell's the point?
Yeah. Okay. Some news from around the NHL. We haven't really touched on it since before the whole thing kind of settled, so to speak. But Vancouver is actually currently playing right now for their first time in, how many weeks since their outbreak started. And it was it was supposed to start before, and there was this whole ordeal where there was apparently an agreement between the NHL, the NHLPA, the Vancouver Canucks, the appropriate medical staff to, you know, start the Vancouver Canucks after just one practice. And then JT Miller came out and spoke aggressively against it. And he said, guys are sick, guys are like recovering, guys are like, this hit us hard. We are not ready. And I can't say for certain that I'm paraphrasing here, but he really openly questioned the decision and the safety involved and whether this was for the good of the players. And then like within, a few hours, the conversations were already happening between the NHL and Vancouver. And the thing is, the NHL or the Vancouver official PR account or the official Vancouver Twitter account retweeted this. And that doesn't happen unless the team is in on this kind of message.
100%.
So good on JT Miller. Good on the Vancouver Canucks for speaking up, because very clearly it wasn't a situation that the players were completely comfortable with. A lot of people will discuss the merits. I don't know. Should they even have come back this season?
They're out of the playoffs, in my opinion, at this point. Like, first of all, they weren't really practicing for X number of weeks, and COVID takes an absolute toll on your respiratory system. Like, it'd be like smoking for an entire week straight and then coming back and trying to play professional hockey. Like, how are you going to feel when Connor McDavid's coming down on you and you're just gasping for air? Like,
Sergei Zubov used to take smoke breaks between periods.
I used to play with a guy. Well, not that it's at the same level, but I played with a guy who would hack darts between periods.
Oh,
and our coach was like, "When are you going to stop smoking?" And his words were, "I'll stop smoking when I stop scoring." Well, he stopped scoring but kept smoking. Yeah, just a legendary line.
Yeah, that's a beer league classic.
Yeah, but like, man, I would have, like, how do you, like, you want to think like, yeah, like the season's kaput at this point and just go by points percentage in the North Division. But there's probably a whole bunch of cascading issues that arise from that I haven't totally thought out.
Sponsorship agreements, TV deals.
Yep, all stuff like that. And
yeah,
you kind of feel for the first team that they have to play coming back, because you're like, okay, like all their tests are negative, but you just never know, right? Like there's always going to be that lingering doubt in someone on Toronto's mind being like, we could potentially be exposed to this, and they have a bigger chip in this season, or a bigger stake in this season than Vancouver does at this point. So after seeing JT Miller's comments, I would have loved to just put the Vancouver season on ice and call it, but you kind of got to soldier on, I guess, given everything else that's needs to be fulfilled for this season. I don't know. It's such a tough spot to be for both players, management, owners, the league. Like, it's tough.
Yeah, like from a human element, if you strip everything else away and they said, all right, guys, like, we know you don't love the idea of not playing hockey, but at no cost to you, you're not going to have to play the rest of the season. Like, please rest, recover, be safe with your families. Like, this is a scary thing. This is a shitty thing for some of you. For some of you, it wasn't so bad, of course, but just like, altogether bad situation. Let's just call it here. There would have been an overwhelming, I think, sense of relief. That's just the general idea you got. When you factor in the fact that they're really not in the playoff race at this point, you have
the other thing that comes into it. The other thing that comes into it is the draft as well, right? Like, they certainly could leapfrog Detroit. Like, let me pull up the league standings.
Yeah,
they're 3 points behind with 9 games in hand.
Their points percentage, I think, is significantly higher than Detroit's.
Yeah, it's .473 and Detroit is .413.
Yeah, Detroit right now has the 5th worst points percentage, which means they'd have 6th best odds in the lottery thanks to Seattle. But yeah, like, you never know what's going to happen. If they lose, like, 9 games, they've played 9 fewer games than Detroit. So if they make up all of those games, they're playing a ton of games in very few days, completely gassed, out of practice, out of shape, through a landmark in the worst way moment of their season. You can expect Vancouver to lose a lot here. If they don't, it'll be a major comeback storyline, so to speak, but you can expect them. By all rights, they should be losing a lot of games here. It'd
be nice for them to like expand the taxi squad restrictions or reduce the restrictions. Allow them to pull in more of their AHL players just to like let them rest some guys when they're obviously going to need it. One of the other things I saw that was kind of a radical, but just a brainstorming idea was doing split squad games. To try and get them caught up, and to spread out the time between games a little bit. Even if you did it for a week, like that would help significantly. I'm not sure Vancouver really cares where they are in the standings at this point. They probably just want to get the season over. But I don't see why anything should be off the table to just try and help these guys get through at this point.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, this is the first game against Toronto. I'm assuming they're just going to, at this point, power through. They've gotten through the work. I don't know how to explain this. They've gotten through the height of, I think, the scrutiny and the conversation. Now that the start got delayed once, I don't really see it rising again, but you never know. If the players really aren't into it, then they'll say something. So, yeah, we'll see. The points percentage is there for a reason, so see how it goes. And very quickly before we jump into overtime here, did you see Mantha scored again today?
I did not, but I feel like I could almost just guess that was going to happen.
4 goals, 4 games, 1 assist in there too. It's funny watching the absolute, like, people who need a trade to be like 100% binary, like one winner, one loser, this good, this bad. The people who are like retconning Mantha into like a bad player, like, or saying like Detroit got completely burned and we should have known this was going to happen. Like, all of that is just, everyone expected this to happen because Mantha's a talented player going to a team full of stars who gives him time and space. Like, when he goes on a power play and he's the third, like, strongest player on that power play unit, he's going to have a lot of time and space, and we're going to see him rip him home. Absolutely, that's going to happen. If you're on a power play with Alex Ovechkin pulling a lot of attention from you, you're going to have room that you didn't have in Detroit. You're going to have Nick Backstrom passing to you, which you didn't have in Detroit. Of course, that's going to happen. He's also more motivated. Players who get traded in a situation like him, they're going to be motivated to perform. They want to do well for their new team. They want to prove their old team wrong, et cetera, et cetera. It always, always, always happens. That doesn't mean that you have to declare that the Red Wings won the trade or the Red Wings lost the trade or, Washington got fleeced or they fleeced Detroit. Like, it's a weird discourse that just doesn't, it's a huge waste of breath.
I still think Detroit won that trade handedly. Yeah. But, it makes it more stomachable as a Washington fan when you start to see the guy you just traded for popping off.
Yeah.
There doesn't need to be this binary winner or loser. Like, I still think Detroit's the winner, but we won't know until they utilize those picks. But at this time, I think that's a massive haul for Mantha.
Yeah, in terms of sheer value, the way that whether Detroit won or lost that trade is not at all dictated by how Mantha plays. Plain and simple, end of story. He can score 50 goals from here to the end of the season, and it will not matter as to how Detroit did in that trade.
He wasn't scoring 50 goals in Detroit, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's that's what it really boils down to. But still, like, the fact that Detroit got the return and Yzerman got the return that he did for Anthony Mantha, considering his current performance in Detroit or how it was this season, that is what qualifies it as a win. He maximized value on an asset where he really had no business getting that much in return. Thus, it's a win. Anything for Washington really took the risk here. And so far, 4 games, that's a tiny sample size, paying off for them. Fantastic. They can win too. Could be a win-win. I don't know if anyone's heard that.
This is where kind of like being a fan or an analyst or whatever you want to call it deviates from the mindset of a GM, because I guarantee you they don't look at like that at all. They say, we need to add this. This is what we're willing to give up, because at the end of the day, if we win a cup with this player contributing, I don't care if we gave up a first round pick. No one will ever think about that. And
they didn't go
when Ovi's swimming in the pool and doing keg stands out of the cup.
No, Washington didn't go trade. They went shopping. It was a transaction. They bought something.
Yeah. And
they bought a tool for their cup run.
And if I'm a Washington Capitals fan or part of the management, I'm thinking this trade is working out big time right now. So long as he doesn't, use it all up at the start, this is looking like a real win for them on a team that's been in a very strong position to contend again.
All right. Well, I'm sure people are sick of hearing about that already. So why don't we jump into overtime here, which on this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is sponsored by the FanDuel Sportsbook, who we are proud to be sponsored by. I said sponsored by twice. FanDuel Sportsbook sponsors the Winged Wheel podcast is what I'm trying to tell you. And with that, let's get into our little series here where we make some picks based on some betting odds, and we'll see how we do. Let's start with the easy one. The next two games, Detroit against Dallas. Detroit is coming in as a pretty steep underdog. Dallas is the heavy favorite. Over under set at 5.5, with the over being the underdog in that too. I don't know what to make of it. I don't feel comfortable betting on Detroit right now,
That's what I was thinking the same thing. It's like, what Detroit team are we going to get? Are we going to get the 4-0 shutout against Chicago, or are we going to get a high flying offensive dynamo of Adam Ernie and whoever else is the flavor of the game? I don't know. Like, I also, to segue a little bit, or what was I going to say? Oh my God, I just lost it. Oh, there it is. I got it. Was it the Calgary-Montreal game that we were arguing about last week? Yeah, Brad got both of those wrong, I think.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That feels good.
That.
When I remember those and then I see the highlights, I'm like, oh, yes.
That's the good stuff.
Anyways, Detroit's so volatile. I just don't know how to bet on them. I just feel like looking at this lineup, like, you can game plan against the three guys who can score on this team. I'm feeling the under. I don't know how Dallas has been playing recently. But clearly Detroit is now regressing back to the mean. So I would feel comfortable going Dallas in the under.
I'm going to go with the exact same thing, and it's a pure emotional hedge. If I'm wrong, great, Detroit wins. If I'm right, there's some money,
Yeah.
Montreal, Edmonton, speaking of Canadian division games, Edmonton is the favored team, minus 134. With the under being the underdog. They're expecting a lot of goals in these games. Over under set at 5.5. I have no faith in the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know. In a high flying game, I just have a hard time betting against Connor McDavid. If this is favored to be a high scoring game, McDavid and Draisaitl and what have you can come out and produce. I'm going to take the favorites Edmonton here. Yeah, I'm going to go for the safe bet. I'm going to go Edmonton in the over.
Yeah. Montreal's basically 500 in their last 10 games. So essentially a coin flip. But when you got guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, and even a Tyson Barrie who's having a very good season, it's kind of hard to bet against them just in terms of straight up winner or loser. The over-under, I just don't really know what to think of Montreal's goaltending this year. Carey Price confuses me. Jake Allen's had a quiet, good year. I don't really know what to take on the over-under. I'm taking Oilers. What was it, 5.5?
Yeah.
I'll take over. It never seems crazy to take an over when Edmonton is playing.
No. A matchup of Goliaths, the Tampa Bay Lightning at home against Carolina. Carolina are the underdogs, not a heavy underdog, plus 100. Tampa Bay minus 118 favorite. Over under set at 5.5. Both sides of that coin with equal odds. Tampa Bay has been a slumping team. I think they're like 3-6-1 in their last 10 or something like that. And Carolina have won 3 straight. It might be an opportunity to get some underdog money.
Yeah, Carolina was the underdog.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little wild to me, because they've looked pretty darn good of recent. So I'd be taking that underdog money all day.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd take the over. I like the offense of both of those teams, but they don't give up a lot of goals, either of them. Like, any night Vasilevsky could just stand on his head, Peter Mrazek got me a shutout in fantasy in his first start back. So, damn it might be crazy, but I'll take the under.
Yeah, I think that's the exact same thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take Carolina because I want some underdog money there. But yeah, there's like 4 goalies between Carolina and Tampa Bay where I'm like, I think their average save percentage is like .975. It's something ridiculous. They're all
share the wealth.
Heads. Yeah, for real. Yeah, I'll go Carolina in the under here. Yeah, why not? Okay, those are some picks, which inevitably, Evan, you are going to beat me like a drum with yet again. The FanDuel Sportsbook. Currently, there is a promotion on where you can bet $1,000 for your first bet risk-free. If you win, you keep the cash, and if you lose, you get $1,000 back in site credit. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started with a risk-free bet of $1,000, and be sure to sign up with promo code WWP so they know the Winged Wheel podcast sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code WWP. You must be 21 and older and present in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, West Virginia, Indiana, Colorado, Iowa, Tennessee, Virginia, or Michigan. First online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable and expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, or Virginia. Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-270-7117 in Michigan. All right, let's get to overtime. And we are going to start with our incredible Patreon supporters, who are the reason we're able to make this show go round and rip on Brad while he's not here. North Moto says, do you guys know where I can get that hat that Veleno was wearing in his first interview after practice? It's black with the red label. I saw that. That's a sweet hat. I would imagine it'll pop up on the online store. If it's not there, it'll pop up within the next season or so.
It's the black hat with the Red Wings logo, and it's like red outlining.
It has like the letters DET on it as well.
Oh, I've never seen that one.
It was cool. I remember seeing it was cool. Also, Brad's tweet was featured as breaking news on the O Nyquist channel. Huh. Well, screw you, Brad. We're not telling you. No, just kidding. We'll tell him. Thanks for the hard work, guys. Best podcast, hands down. Thank you, North Moto. That means a lot to us. Quaz says, so this Red Wings team is very hot, cold. One day dominate, next day get caved, such is life. Yeah.
That's bad teams.
Yeah.
That's what bad teams do. Good teams are consistent.
Silver lining. Last year, we didn't even have the hot part. It was just pure cold.
It was ice cold and cold.
Harun Khan says it's early, but watching Mantha be the Mantha we all know he could be hurts. It makes you question where Detroit would be if Blashill wasn't there. Also, do you think he's back next year?
I mean, yes, Washington is also like in a good spot, right? Like Detroit is not. Like it doesn't. Blashill is just a component of that.
Quick yes or no. Is Blashill back next year?
Yes.
I'm going to say no. Just go opposite.
Well, we don't have a tiebreaker, so that's what we got to go with for now.
Looks like we have to have the debate again. Antonio Gracia says, how much does consistency depend on coaching? With crazy ups and downs, how much is on the players versus the coaching staff? I'm not one of those people that thinks coaches don't affect change. I think coaches have a big impact on hockey teams, and that's from, the minor levels all the way up to the NHL. I think consistency is one of the hallmarks of how your coaching staff is doing. That's my take.
And, players are responsible to get up for games, but the coaches instill that, hate to say it, that culture of being ready. Like, how many times was that the Red Wings just not play the first period under Mike Babcock? Then he goes to Toronto and it's the exact same thing. Clearly, there's some sort of correlation between that. So I think the coaches play a huge role in the consistency of the team.
And there's always the conversation, like the straw man for this, when people are like, well, Patrick Kane's going to get up and he's going to do Patrick Kane things no matter who's behind the bench. And like, yeah, that's true. But you're also talking about the most extreme example on your team.
You're not worried about your superstars getting up for games and getting points because they always will. They will always find a way. It's the depth players. It's the guys who are super, I shouldn't say emotional, but like their game is very, depends on their confidence. And
yeah,
the coaches definitely have a part to play in that.
The average NHL player isn't a superstar, and the average NHL player has a pretty, big range of how they can play on any given night. getting the most out of your players is your job. And the NHL isn't the NBA where, LeBron James can wake up and just literally win a game himself, where everyone else sucks around him, but he went off and they win. That's just not how hockey works. You need, 3 of your 4 lines and 2 of your 3 D pairs to be firing at least. And that's not all Patrick Kane's. It's a lot of Adam Ernie's. It's a lot of Chernaks. There's a lot of, depth players in there. Not that those
absolutely.
Are yeah. John Evans says, hello, gentlemen. Greetings from Ohio. Wanted to share a story about Mantha. I was fortunate enough to attend the roast of Mickey Redmond as a fundraiser for the Jamie Daniels Foundation. A lot of players were there, and Mantha being as big as he is, he's hard to miss. After the show was over, I noticed a fan stopped to ask him a question, and slowly a crowd began to form around him. I watched him graciously talk to every single fan he could, like he had all the time in the world for every person he met that wanted to talk to him. It seemed like a very cool, down-to-earth moment, and while I like the return for him, he'll still be missed. Seems like a very good guy, and I hope he has success in Washington. That's a good story. I feel the exact same, John. The worst person imaginable says, let's overreact. Who's going to win the Calder, Raymond or Moritz? I'm going to say Seider just because he's more NHL ready.
What were my 2 options, Raymond or Seider?
Yeah.
I'll say Raymond. It's very difficult for defensemen to win the Calder. You said Calder, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Matt McKay says, hey guys, thanks for all the great content. Just curious what your coaching wish list would be to replace the current coaching staff. Larionov, I would love Gronberg to get a look anywhere in the NHL, actually. Gallant, or Lane Lambert. This is a pretty restrictive list because the world of coaching is kind of unknown to fans. You never know what random assistant or college level guy is going to get a look to.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the list for me as well. The storyline with Gallant is too good to be true, but I hope it could come to fruition. I also like what Larionov's got going on in Russia, and we are the Ricard Gronberg punting people. We punt that guy. We're gonna get him in at some point.
Yeah.
We think very highly of him. So I don't know if a Detroit is where you'd want to make your landing in the NHL. You'd probably want to go to a good team that needs an assistant coach, but stranger things have happened.
Tape to tape. And I make several typos in my tweets, but they always inevitably end up becoming Patreon name. Instead of tape to tape pass, I wrote tape to tape pss. Forgot the A. So this next comment is from tape to tape pss. It says, hello Dub boys. Weird how Mantha, a highly skilled player, plays better with other skilled players. Makes you feel vindicated. Other thing of note is Caps fans will have to deal with the ridiculous Habs fan trade proposals. Do you guys have any predictions for Veleno? Number of games to expect or expectations? We covered expectations a little bit. For number of games, I'll say he plays 5. Yeah.
I'll think unless something completely disastrous happens, whether it be injury or he just has 0 game, I'll say he plays the max he's allowed.
Okay. Evan's bingo card says, hey guys, I got engaged last night. Hey, congratulations. That's awesome. So it's been a good weekend already. Happy for Big Mo doing Big Mo things in Washington. I was wondering what you think Verana's contract will be, and when do you think would be the best time to move him if you were Yzerman? Thanks for all the great work. Keep killing it. I don't see this being more than a 2-year deal. Max 3. I think Yzerman is pretty clear about wanting to bring guys back on short-term deals. I don't know what the comparables are. I have to look a little bit more into it. I think Brad would have a better sense off the top of his head. You're looking at a short contract, so you're not looking at high dollar value. You're not looking.
He's still an RFA.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would affect it.
That's good negotiating power for Detroit, right?
Big time.
He has arbitration rights. He's making 3.35 right now. He's due for a raise just based on his performance in limited minutes in Washington.
Yeah, when you go 24, then 25 goals, typically you get a pay raise at some capacity.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to break the bank. That's for sure. No. But you're an RFA. You don't have a whole ton of wiggle room there. So, if they got him for like 5.5, I don't know the comparables or anything, but he's got a great skill set, and I think that's a very manageable contract regardless of term.
I honestly think he'll come in cheaper than that. I think it'll be like 2 years, 3 years, and under 5.5. But
that'd be great.
Yeah, I think actually, surprisingly enough, I think a lot will ride on how he finishes the season too.
Me too. There's also, not a lot of money being thrown around right now in the NHL, so that will definitely affect it. So really, I think it's all lining up to be sort of the negotiation for the team is in better position than it is for the player.
Yeah. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into the comparables and see what we might expect.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Bohan says, hello.
Anthony Mantha, that's his comparable.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, my lovely Dub boys. With half the team on free agency at the end of the year, who would you keep? Who would you replace? And who with? Do you think this team looks much the same next year, or should we expect big changes? We won't go player by player because that's a full episode someday. Yeah. Players I bring back.
I've got 2. 3 I'd bring back.
Who are they?
4 I'd bring back. I'd bring back Bobby Ryan, Bernier. No one on defense. San Gagne and Luke Glendening.
Yeah, I'm not bringing back Mark. I'm excluding the RFAs here. I'm not bringing back Mark Stahl. Even on a minimum deal, I'm not interested in that really. Bernier, yeah. Bobby Ryan, yes. I'm happy if they bring back Sam Gagne. I don't think he's like the best option. Lots of them. Yeah. He could easily not bringing back Filppula. I'm sorry. I'm not bringing back Helm even on a minimum.
Either someone's going to pick up or sign Sam Gagne for a cheap contract, just for cheap depth, or he might be a PTO guy somewhere in the league.
He seems like a great dude in the locker room, honestly. And he's not a complete stinker on the ice, and that's enough for me to fill Detroit's fourth line.
Yeah, sure.
CNOD says, back to reality a little bit. This team has a lot to accomplish before contending. More competitive, but no game-breaking talent. Say what you want about Chicago, but Kane can steal a lot of hockey games, even with a subpar team. Thanks for the pod.
That's exactly what we were talking about before we started I didn't watch the game last night, so I watched the recap, and first thing I said was, Patrick Kane is still one of the best players in the league.
Yeah, like game-breaking ability, truly, which is why it kills me when people have Patrick Kane comparables, because I'm like, how can you even say that? Yeah.
Yeah, who's the Connor McDavid comparable? He's his own tier of good.
La Plata Peak says AJ Hinch was on the 119 loss 03 Tigers. Dan Campbell was on the 0-16 Lions. The 85-86 Red Wings won 17 out of 80 games. Same number of wins out of 71 last season. Gerard Gallant was on that team. Just saying. That is a phenomenal point. And we love tradition in Detroit.
We love our tinfoil hats on this podcast, so we keep those coming.
2022 Selke runner-up Adam Ernie Stan Club says Buffalo looks so much better with a mildly competent rookie head coach than some jabroni pretending he's a knockoff of Barry Trotz. I wonder if that's at all relevant to the Red Wings.
It's almost like if you play the wrong systems for the players you have, they play poorly.
Yeah, imagine not getting good results out of Eichel and Dahlin.
Yeah, when you let your creative players be creative and do their own thing a little bit, it's wild. It's wild how much better they are.
Banana is Larger says, hey guys, has Brad picked up Richard Panik for his fantasy team and then changed his name to team name to Panic at the Crisco?
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Where the hell is Brad in our fantasy league?
Last. Although I think
I was just looking for that stupid dog picture.
He loves that picture.
He has not picked up.
Oh, man. Brad, you got to commit to the bit. Come on, man. Sure, your daughter's in the hospital getting stitches right now, but you really got to prioritize here.
Yeah, that's a rough-looking team, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Conrad Lincoln, the Black Lumberjack, says, good day, gents. I've been listening for years, but I haven't been listening long enough to know what the origins of Stay Fresh cheese bags is. Care to share? Adam Ernie is a Hall of Famer. Yes, we should do this more often because we have to remember that people tune in at different points, and we honestly treat all of our listeners and fans and people we interact with as like our friends. Like that's genuinely how we think of you guys. So we forget that we have to explain this. Joseph Fournier saw the phrase "Stay Fresh cheese bags" used somewhere as like a leave the room quip, like an outro if you will. And it just stuck in his Patreon comments, and I noted it. I was like, that's a hysterical thing to say. And so he started just saying stay fresh cheese bags. And then Rowan, being the, as I mentioned on the previous episode, quintessential Australian Red Wings fan, he is made it into an absurdist literal joke, full of, shit posting and trolling. And so he talked about stay fresh cheese bags as a physical product. If you're like, that's the stupidest origin for an inside joke ever, yeah, welcome to the Winged Wheel podcast. Sam W says, how possible is it that Brad has limiting beliefs when it comes to Rasmussen? He just turned 22 yesterday. Some big players take a little longer to be themselves at the next level. I know we don't need to get overhyped about a 9th overall, becoming an NHL player, but isn't he showing some signs of being someone who can make a difference out there? What would it take for him to justify his draft position? Also, did you see Lindstrom lay out Doc? Granted, Doc was off balance, but still, I like the kid. Yeah, we covered it last episode, and, you know, I don't want to sit here and say Brad's definitely wrong while he's not here. I don't think that's, you know, all joking aside, like, we should probably bring this back up when he's here, but I think it's super hard to detach the 9th overall. I don't see Rasmussen living up to a 9th overall pick. But if you consider him relative to that draft class, maybe, yeah. What does he need to do? He needs to stick on that second, third line performance. He needs to be a power play contributor, and he needs to continue to improve. Again, I mean what I said last episode. I'm stripping away all of that context when I think about Michael Rasmussen. I'm treating him as if he's a random late second, third, fourth round pick who's making it up through the ranks. And it's a lot more easy to be excited about him that way. So yeah, I think if you're really attached to the draft stock, which is without speaking for him while he's not here, what Brad is, it is easy to limit your beliefs in Rasmussen. And I think fans need to really kind of step away from that, as hard as that is to say.
Yeah, I think at this point, the expectations are somewhere in the second, third line, be a solid contributor on the power play in some capacity, and have hopefully a long career. You know, if he doesn't live up to the 9th overall pick playing 500 games, well, if you get 1,000 games out of a guy like him at number 9, it doesn't really matter what his stat line is. You didn't have to fill a place in your roster for 1,000 games, 800, 900 games, whatever. I don't think Rasmussen will get to 1,000 games because that's a lot of games and not many guys have done it. But if you can get some longevity out of him, I think that's perfectly fine.
Matt S says, if you had a choice, what would you prefer? A top 2 defenseman that can score 20 goals a season, or a number 1 center who's a point per game player? Keep up the good work, Dubs.
So would you rather have Tyson Barrie or Mark Scheifele?
Yeah, it pains me to say, but I'll take the number 1 center every time.
Yes.
Point per game over your career, yeah. Mike Seward says, how many games do you guys predict Lucas Raymond plays in the NHL next season? 9.
I don't have a good grasp on which prospects will stick and which won't. If there's any team for him to have a chance of making, it is Detroit.
I think he's a year removed from sticking in Detroit, but I think we'll see him at the audition.
I would like to get a good look, for sure.
AJ Voss says, does Seider possibly contend for the Calder Trophy next year?
So hard to tell without knowing what other rookies are coming into the NHL.
I think there's a chance. I think it might be a little bit limited because of he might not put up massive offensive numbers, so he might not get the attention that he necessarily deserves. But yeah, I think there's a chance.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about was did Aaron Ekblad win the Calder? I think he did.
Aaron Ekblad. Calder.
I'm pretty sure he did. So, I don't know if Florida was very good when he won. So, you could kind of look at what his numbers were like as a Calder winner. Getting there, trying to talk really slowly. He had 12 goals, and he was half a point per game player. He had with 12 goals. That's
a lot of offensive output for a rookie defenseman, right? So
yeah. I think 12 goals would be good for Moritz Seider as a veteran defenseman.
Yeah, if he's putting
12 as a rookie would be really good.
Yeah. Third man in says, as a sidebar to Monday's question about offer sheeting Elias Pettersson, although the Wings should totally offer sheet Elias Pettersson. What are the rules on the compensatory first-round picks? Could a team only offer sheet a player at the highest tier if they still own their next 4 consecutive first-round picks? Or could it be the next 4 first-round picks they still had, even if those were spread out over 6 or 7 years? Good tool is Cap Friendly's offer sheet calculator. It'll show you what team meets the requirements as to who owns their pick, and it has to be their picks. I believe you can trade, like if you don't own your picks anymore, you can trade back for them and get them. The draft picks must be available in the nearest entry draft unless the compensation requires 2 or more draft picks in the same round. An extra year can be used for compensation for these picks. If 2 first-round picks are required, the club must have 2 first-round picks available in the next 3 drafts. Okay, so that's a little bit different, yeah. So I was wrong in my initial thoughts. So you can have a little bit of leeway there. Okay, Don Mitchell says, how weird is Patrick Marleau breaking Gordie Howe's games played record going to be? And what's a bucket list type of memorabilia that you're looking for? It's very weird to see Gordie Howe's records fall, especially like no slight to Patrick Marleau, but Gordie Howe's like Mount Rushmore of hockey level and Patrick Marleau's not. So it's really strange to see that fall, but yeah.
Yeah, it's super, super bizarre because that's going to be one of those weird trivia questions and maybe even just 10 years.
Honestly.
It's going to be there's going to be a lot of people who get stumped by that because you're going to think, Gordie Howe played 5 generations, it feels like. But no, it's Patrick Marleau. It'll be super weird.
Don's holy grail or bucket list memorabilia that he's looking for was up until last year was a section of boards from the Joe. Was fortunate enough to find a big section and grabbed it before the world ended. Thanks as always. Stay safe, drink water, buy Dogecoin, and let's go Red Wings. Aggressive Viper says, where do you see Veleno fitting in the organization? Will he get a shot to play, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, we mentioned Veleno. Where does he fit in? Hopefully third line center.
That's what I was thinking. If he struggles, move him to the wing, whatever, shelter him. Just let him dip his toes.
Lars, the prophet of the towering behemoth, says, if we get rid of all the UFAs after this season, replace them all with Seider, and maybe a few other prospects, then add some free agents to fill it out, what's the risk that we improve just enough to end up in the mushy middle and get mid-first rounders for the rest of the rebuild? This is almost an argument to offer sheet Pettersson, get Pettersson and hand over 4 first rounders for 2022 to 2025. Suddenly sounds more appealing, right?
Isn't 2022 the Bedard, or is that the Shane Wright draft?
That's the Shane Wright draft. The next one's the Bedard draft, and yeah.
I prefer to, be in the running for those 2 players. So maybe we can wait. Maybe someone else will come up.
That's going to be a big argument because I think there's a lot of merit to it. Seattle Kraken power play specialist Dennis D. Sostrowski says, hey fellas, looks like some things are becoming more clear, like how the expansion draft might shake out. In regard to Lars's comment, if Steve does intend to offer sheet Pettersson, then this rebuild must be sped up. He'll have to overpay for him and quickly plug other holes. This team can't afford to continue to suck if it lacks its next 4 first-round picks. Does that spell the end for Blash? Does a player like DeKaiser and Nielsen get bought out? Do you make a UFA signing? Also, there's just a few players signed for next season. Many are RFAs who will definitely be retained, and a couple UFAs who will likely be back. As long as John Merrill returns, that's what matters most, his glorious flow. Finally, to answer the age-old question of why is Darren Helm, the great George Malik reminded us that Darren Helm married Ken Holland's niece during the same summer he signed his current contract. Womp womp. I forgot that was the same summer, but I did know. Aussie for Hall of Fame, stay fresh cheese bags. Tyler C says picks are 6 in 2025. Would you rather Wallstedt and Stankoven or Johnson and Kosa? Oh, Johnson and Kosa for sure. Or Kosa.
I don't really know. I haven't done my my studying of the prospects so far, but isn't Wallstedt's the goalie, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he predicted to be a much higher pick?
I don't know with goalies. Do they go higher than 6 usually? Hard to say.
I don't know.
Yeah, Kosa's also a goalie who's looking pretty strong.
Well,
yeah.
That just shows you how much I've read up on this draft.
Stevie Langerman says, let's go Verana. Let's go pick 20. Honestly, boys, I think this is the most exciting moment being a Wings fan since Raymond. I miss Mantha. I think he's great, but I'm stoked for the next steps for this team. Great trade deadline coverage, and thanks again for the pod. Aside from the Wings, who won the trade deadline? Who lost? Columbus won for getting the picks that they did for the players that they lost. I think that's
Buffalo was
definitely
a
true.
loser.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind. It has to be Buffalo.
I'd say Detroit was a winner.
Matt Whip says, who's more likely to blow up in college, Tuomisto or Master Simone?
That's
Master
a bad
Simone.
question.
Yeah, I think Master Simone's offensive game is more apt for big performances. So if his skill continues to progress, he might be more noticeable. All right, time for some Reddit comments. Top comment here from I am Joe 1994 says, no question, but you guys are my favorite. Thank you, Joe. I know that's secretly Evan, but I appreciate it. All right, Evan, start picking some random numbers between 1 and 6.
6.
If Columbus can't get Line A re-signed, do you think his trade value would be low due to his relatively high qualifying offer at 7.5 mil? And if so, should Yzerman get involved?
I'd be grabbing Line A for 7.5 mil.
I don't think Jarmo lets it happen. I think they replace Tortorella before they move on from Line A.
Oh, 100%.
If they move on from Line A, then they're also definitely moving on from Tortorella. MJC's 7006 says, with 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks, do you expect to trade up? And if so, what would it cost to get back into the top 15?
This draft is weird. In a normal draft, we could probably come up with some sort of prospective value on that. But there might be a lot of teams that just sit pat because they're thinking there's going to be a ton of guys available at the picks that they want. But that could also, be the opposite. They'd be like, we'll trade back because we know there's going to be lots of guys available. So I don't know this year. It's going to be a weird draft, or it won't be. And this will all be for naught.
All right. I'm going to randomly pick at a comment here because can't trust you. Okay. On the more offer sheets. This is from Antomai says, on the topic of offer sheets, let's say Detroit did manage to sign a player like Pettersson. Do you think it would then be more difficult to get players like Zadina, Hronek, etc. to sign a team-friendly deal if there's already a newly signed player making over $10 million a year? Once you start broaching that level, players are going to know that you're going to be willing to sign away that kind of money. So it's tough. That's a really good point. Mm-hmm. There's no one at Pettersson's level on this team, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% right.
Okay. What do you think? We should wrap this one up? Let's wrap this one up. Thank you all for tuning in. Apologies for those who were looking forward to hearing the dulcet tones of Brad's voice. He will be back, keeping Mika in our thoughts right now as she's going through a little bit of a rough time getting stitches, poor kid. But thanks for bearing with us. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, our name level sponsors, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartel on behalf of the Sarah Garand Foundation, Brett Bailey, Terry, driver of Evans, Ferkwagon, Taylor Tagel, Brandon M, Citizen High Five, Craig Kibble, Evans selling dirty shoes on OnlyFans, Greach, Han Ali, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jacob Turner, Jake Kiefer, Jeremiah Dobo, Joe Santangelo, Caitlin Wood, Cody Stark, Kyle Hashman, Luke Johnson, Matt McKay, Matthew M. Rice, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Zach Spring, Andrew Bohan, Sam Bankson, Adam, Aggressive Viper, another former junior goalie turned golfer, Antonio Gracias, Connor Leighton, Evans Bingo Card, congrats again on being engaged, Fine, Crisco, Jeremy Brocker, John Evans, Joseph Minama, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Matt Keeler, Oz Good As It Gets, and Seattle Kraken Power Play Specialist Dennis DeSauce Cholosky, Stan Olson, Trevor Pevovar. Thank you all so much. We'll talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.